So Shulchan Aruch Harav 313:20 subsection 21. So it starts therefore. So maybe we should quickly review. We're talking about we said that by vessels, meaning something that is not attached to the ground, and also provided is not over a certain size, which is 40 saw, which is a cubit by 3 cubits.
No. The quality of the picture.
So
the picture, I'm watching it.
There is no building, and of course, when there's no building, there's also no demolishing. Because when it comes to usually by small kalim, you have the problem of making final touches, but there isn't as much the problem of unfinalizing a touch as there is by building, where you have its opposite, which is demolishing. However, that which it was said that there is no building and putting together, that's talking about when you're doing insignificant acts of building, like sticking the door in and stuff like that. But when you're actually making an entire keli out of parts, then it's a problem. So long as you're either wedging, as you're connecting it strongly, it's called wedging, but this means connecting it strongly with a nail, with glue, or like tongue and groove, where the pieces of wood are wedged together in a strong way. Then this is a problem, and you can't even put this together in a loose way. However, if it's something that's made to be together in a loose way, then you can put it together in a loose way. Now the difference is going to be when, in terms of something that that's made to stay together for a long time. If it's made to stay together for a long time, it's actually a Torah level prohibition. If it's not made to stay together for a long time, again, we're talking about something that when you put it together in a strong way, something that's made to be in a strong way, you put it together in a strong way. This is mamish binyan from the Torah. It's a Torah prohibition of binyan if it's made to be together for a long time. If it's not made to stay together, then it is a rabbinical level of binyan, of building. So now continuing with 21. Lefikach, therefore, kol kli shel prakim shenisparik, any the vessel of parts, or any kli of parts that came together, also chacham lachzir b'Shabbos, the sages forbid to reassemble it on Shabbos. Afilu ein mahadkei elo me'at, even if he's only sticking it together a little bit, be'inyan shurafi ve'ein rafi, in a way that it's meaning partially, it's not totally loose, but it's like a little bit, loose. Because they're worried that you might come to put it together in its proper way. But if he doesn't wedge it at all, but he puts it completely loose, mutter, then you're allowed. But this is specifically when this kli is made to be put together loosely like this. All right, but if it's a kli that its way is to be put together strongly, even if he puts it now completely loose, Also, lachzira, he's not allowed to put it together this way. Because we're worried that maybe he will put it together in a strong way. Is there notes on this part? Because now he's going to go into a cup that's made of parts.
Yeah. Okay. So there's one note I think of significance. Basically, so this is a decree because it's a gzeira that in case lest one reattach the parts securely. So we saw in Shin Ches an example of that, and also later in 519 we talk about that this chumrah, this stringency, is not applied on Yom Tovim. We'll also see in 279, or we saw in 279, which states that kalim assembled from parts that can break when they fall should not be handled on Shabbos because they might fall, and if they fall, we're afraid that the parts will become separated and one might forget and reattach them on Shabbos. Yeah, that's it.
Right.
Okay.
This is assuming that it's a kli that is not a kli of parts that is made to be loosely put together is not a problem, because then even if you're going to come to reassemble it, you're only assembling loose that comes to loose. It's talking about, like we have the example of the candelabra. So it's,
well, again,
there's certain candelabras that just kind of hang there, and there's ones that you stick in. So this problem of dropping them, that you're worried that you're going to drop it, is specifically when it's ones that are actually stuck in.
Well, again, because the Zera that this note was on, the Zera is you might reattach them securely if that's an option. If it's not an option, like some of the candelabras, it doesn't matter how hard you shove it in. It's not. It doesn't.
It's right. It has a pin and it hangs there just based on, because if its own gravity, it blocks the pin from going from tipping over. But you can actually come. Yeah. The kaishel prakim. And a cup that is made of parts. There are those who say, even though its way is to be stuck a little bit, you can go back, and if it falls out, you can put it back and you can stick it a little bit. You're not worried that he's going to wedge it forcefully. Because it is not common to force this thing into the cup so strong to the point where it's baina, right? Which like the Alter Rebbe says, the Alter Rebbe's categorization of this amount would be that it would be hard to pull it back apart. Now these cups, they're meant to come apart and put together. So even though it's not like completely loose and like wiggling all around, because obviously if you have the leg of the cup and it's wiggling all around, how are you going to use it? So it gets stuck in like a medium where it holds, which usually it can be a problem. But when it's a cup like this, so there are some that say that you're not worried about that because you'll never come to stick it in that because then it's going to be hard to take it apart. Why are you going to stick it in so much? So it's not a common thing to do with it. So you're not likely to stick to wedge it so forcefully and to the degree that it's going to be considered the malacha of building. And this that it's prohibited to wedge even somewhat is specifically by a bed of parts and similar, that you have a concern that you might actually come to stick it in strong. So that's one opinion. The other opinion is the other opinion is that there's no difference between this above mentioned sort of cup and other vessels. You're not allowed to reassemble the cup unless you put it in completely loose, right? And it is good to be stringent like their words. Unless you have a great need. Then you can rely on those who are lenient if it is not the way to stick this cup in a strong way. This is specifically in a case of great need. Avol cases, however, cups asuyim b'charitzim saviv umudakim b'chezik. However, there's cups that are made with grooves around it, and they are put in firmly. So basically, like you screw like a screw in bottom. According to everybody, so up until now we're talking about it has like it protrudes and the other one has like there's a male and female part of the cup and you put them in together, right? And but you're not, but there's no tightening. So the problem is how tight is the peg that goes into the hole? How tight is that? That's that's going to be the issue. And if it's the way to put it in strongly, which some say you still can't do it, and some say it's okay. And the Alter Rebbe says that only in a place of need that you can rely on that on them. But the ones that are made with grooves, those are made to be screwed in strongly. So according to everybody, you're not allowed to do this. Even if you do completely loose, because like we said before, something that its way is to put it together strongly. You're not allowed to put it together even loosely for the fear that you might come to put it together strongly. However, still, the cover of a vessel that is made with grooves around it, even though you tighten it very strongly on the mouth of the vessel, there is no issue with this. There's no prohibition. Not when you take off the cover because of demolishing, not when you're returning it from building. They are not made to stay on at all. So we're talking about, for example, a mason jar was the example that we used before. That a mason jar has grooves. You're screwing it on. And actually, sometimes you're dafka. The whole point of a mason jar, right? You know, the mason jars, they have the thing and they have that lid that has like that what do you call it? Like a grommet on it? How's it called?
Yeah.
It's actually the whole point is made to be airtight, right? You're actually trying to make it airtight. So you're for sure putting it on in a way that's strong. However, they're made to be opened and closed regularly. So wait, sorry, I have to go back because there's no, that's right. They're made to be opened and closed even on the day itself, meaning not just that it's made to be opened within several days or whatever it is, this kind of thing, but they are made in such a way that they're made to be opened and closed regularly. I want to take a pickle from my thing that my fermenting pickles. Right? I'll open it up. I'll take a pickle. 5 minutes later, my daughter sees me with a pickle and says, "Hey, I want a pickle too." I'm going to go open it again and give her a pickle. So, and they did not prohibit temporary building and demolishing, besides for in a case that it's not made that you're not going to take it back apart on Shabbos itself. So meaning the only time there's a prohibition is when when you're not going to undo it on the same day. That's when you really have that prohibition. And in this case, being that it's made to come open and close on a regular basis, so it's not a problem like is explained in the next Siman. Notes.
Okay, so let's go back a little bit. Okay, so we already did that one. Nothing major. I think just a couple of points to just clarify some things a little bit. But I think you pretty much covered them. But anyway, so we said there's there's authorities who maintain that a cup made of component parts can be reassembled somewhat tightly. So we're talking to a goblet whose cup and stem and base, right, are initially separate entities, and they can be assembled easily without much effort or professional skill. Like we said today, like some of those plastic cups we see nowadays, where it just kind of pops in and out. So it's interesting. Then he continued and said, cups parts are usually assembled somewhat lightly. We're not concerned that one will attach them very tightly, because not at all the word klal is used, common to attach the parts of a cup so tightly that one would be liable for building. So on that, it says the term klal we translate at all, is the Alter Rebbe's addition to the wording of his source, the Torah. The Torah does not have the word klal. Alter Rebbe adds klal. And with it, he is explaining the reason why the decree mentioned in the earlier clauses of the subsection is not applied to a cup. It applies to other things, but to a cup, it's not so because it's entirely uncommon to attach the parts of a cup so firmly. And that's a note from the Tehillah David. It is a very interesting Nakuda that Alter Rebbe is trying to bring out, how Bichlal, we don't use cups that way. Other things, yeah, fine, but cups, no. Come on.
Yeah.
That's the vibe that the Alter Rebbe is giving off with this added klal.
Meaning what? It can't just be that. It can't just be that for the most part you don't do it. It has to be a thing that mamish is not used that way.
Saying cups don't use that way, so it's not a concern at all. Like, because the whole so much of this is we're concerned that maybe. So who cares that that mostly whatever. We're concerned that maybe. So how does this suddenly not apply? How can this be the exception to the rule when the whole rule is about maybes?
Right. Because in this case you never
because
use
it's not at all. Like nobody does this.
Yeah.
And again, even with the not at all, yes, there's always a on a cloud. There might be some weirdo or whatever, but it's talking about, so much of this is about human behavior and about what people do, and how people use stuff and how it seems even and what it looks like.
Right.
So yeah. And then he just comments again with regards to the bed made up of component parts that is back in the day. Yeah, the Talmudic era, travelers used beds that were assembled from various component parts. They would bring makeshift beds with them. Different parts popping together.
Oldie timey IKEA.
Yeah. One interesting note, I don't really understand what he's referring to. He said with regards to cups with concentric grooves, by screwing different pieces together would be problematic. But he said the collapsible cups used today are permitted to be used on Shabbos. What collapsible cups is he talking about?
Oh, you don't know these? You've never seen the Shabbos travel kits?
Well, I have a collapsible Nagelwasser quart that has two little handles. I've never seen a Kiddush cup.
It's the same idea. They have these Shabbos travel kits. And it has these two like little like, I mean, they're probably not silver, they're probably pewter, but it has like these two like a flat like candlelight holders, right? And whatever, I forget exactly what else. And it has this cup that collapses into itself flat. It's like a disc. And then it's something that,
so like the quart I have
made as a camping cup. There's probably it's probably a camping tool, and somebody from Borough Park was, when they were going in Guangzhou for the trade show to look for what's called this thing, and said, when we can make this in silver, what's it called, with this Shabbos kit. So it's this cup that you pull out, and it's a telescopes up, and it like flips into place, and then when you're done with it, you push it, it collapses back down.
Very cool. Very cool. I will say, just on that note, so the Nagelwasser quartz that they sell, they come with this little plastic container that officially is supposed to be used as the shissel. Especially for as far as Lubavitch goes, how much water we use, there's no way that's going to work. It's like this flat little. So what I found was you can find in pet stores, Walmart, online, dog feeding bowls, basically collapsible bowls of multiple sizes. It's much better. They're much bigger and much more realistic, but they flatten. So it's a great travel. Whenever we travel, we bring this quart and shissel, and we use that quart when we're on the road. We wash Nagelwasser to have lunch or whatever. We bring it with us. Anyway, highly recommended. Don't worry, this is not a paid advertisement, but just a highly recommended thing to have because it comes in clutch so often. A lot of times you don't have space to carry a giant quart. But you're flying on the plane with kids, whatever, you have sandwiches.
100%.
This tiny thing, it fits into a tiny little cooler bag or whatever little lunch bag you have. It's very handy.
Right. See, I do the old school method of foraging. When I get to my location, I start looking around. What
makeshift? Well, again,
is there a pot or something that can use
a regular cup. But lechatchila, you're supposed to have a designated cup, and it should be a cup that has handles, whatever. There are these concepts, especially two handles. Technically, you could use a random thing. Worst comes to worst, but I will tell you though, the fact that it's small is also problematic because I used to have three, and now I can only find one of them. But whatever, that's a different story. Anyway, so
by the way, it should be noted we are now categorized as a science and technology show as well. So.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, further.
So what's interesting is so then he says there's no prohibition. He said, there's no prohibition with regards to shreif, screw threads, basically the cover of utensils that are made of concentric grooves. So I think our example was perfect. Your example was perfect of the mason jar. He says something like, the cover of a pot that somewhat resembles the cover of a modern day pressure cooker. I don't see how that works. Pressure cookers they're not screws. It's the latch thing that just
right. No, you know what it is? I think that perhaps the you have to remember that your average sort of guy who learns halacha, or who certainly who works on the footnotes for Shulchan Aruch and things like that, they may not necessarily be into fishing, making sourdough bread, fermenting things like I am. So the reason to me, it's I literally use before Shabbos. I take my sourdough starter out of a mason jar and I ferment stuff. So I thought of it, but whoever was working on these footnotes, probably if you told him a mason jar, he'd probably have to look it up to see what it is. So he came up with like an example that's like theoretic because he's not familiar with mason jars properly.
Yeah. All right, so that was it. Chav Beis.
Okay, Chav Beis. Kol kli shel perakim. Shehu mehudak b'chezik b'inyan shayachayiv mishum hiduk zeh. Also lefarki b'Shabbos mishum seiser. Right, since we're talking about the binyan, we're talking about building on Shabbos, so there is a corresponding a prohibition of demolishing. What is this demolishing? It doesn't necessarily mean you're taking a sledgehammer and breaking wooden things into shards. What does demolishing mean? It means that anything that's made of parts that's stuck together and in such a way that you would be chayav for putting it together, if you are transgressing a Torah obligation of building on Shabbos, when you take that thing apart, you are transgressing the melacha of demolishing on Shabbos. Avol im humuhuda ksos. But if it is slightly stuck together, meaning that there is the only reason you're not allowed to put it together is because we're worried that you're gonna come to stick it together fully, right? If it's stuck strong, it's a total prohibition. If you're making something that is slightly stuck together, you're not allowed to do it, but that's only a rabbinic prohibition that you might come to stick it together strongly. You might come to do a Torah prohibition of baina, but in this case, you are ein baikam isha. So in this case, there is no prohibition of taking it apart, and you're allowed to take it apart in the first place, meaning that the enactment of the sages, that they're worried that you might come to stick it together strongly, it only applies to putting it together. It does not apply to taking it apart, which makes sense, because being that their whole worry is that it's going to come to be stuck together strongly, and you might come to transgress a Torah prohibition. So when you're taking it apart, there is no Torah prohibition that we're worried you're going to come to here, and therefore, in the first place, you are allowed to take it apart, even in the first place.
No significant notes.
Notes.
No significant notes.
What's that?
There's no significant notes. They're just part of
nothing significant. Okay. So Chav Gimel 23. Keira mitikras habayis shenishbira. The beam from the roof of a house, right? What do they call them? There's a name for them. Forget what they're called.
Klutz.
What's that?
Klutz. A klutz?
No, they're called rafters, something. I forget what they're called. There's a word for them.
Oh, rafters. Yeah, I know that.
Rafters. There's another word for them also. When they're like inside the house, you have the main beams, and then you have the ones that go across. They call it something else. But anyways, a beam from the roof, right? We're talking about that broke. You are allowed to support it. You're allowed to put it or support it with a bench or the post of a bed. Shehein kli, because they are kalim, right? They are a keli, like we said before, it's a usable vessel. Loy kadesh tale. Now you cannot put it like in such a way that you're raising the ceiling beam, the roof beam, with the bed or the bench, because shahar is a baina, that's building. In other words, what's building? Building is you are making an improvement. That it's now you just made it better than it was before. So if you raise it, you're fixing it. This is a problem. But rather only in such a way that it will not come down. You're just preventing it from caving in more. But something that is not a kli, something that is not a vessel, even if he readied it to move it, meaning he designated it for use, such that it is now no longer muktzah. You are allowed to move it on Shabbos, like when we spoke about before that the board. If you're going to cover the window with a board, so you have the two issues there. One of them is, does it look like baina, which we say by a window it does not, because a window is made to open and close regularly. Our other problem is this board. If you're using a kli, if you're using a vessel, something that already has a use, there was no problem. But if you're going to use a board, stama board, this board is not something that it's a piece of building material. It's not something that has it's a raw material. It's like a stick or a stone. So therefore, unless you designated it before Shabbos, you can't use it. In this case, even if you designated it, also you cannot put it under the beam because it's similar to building. On the other hand, by a vessel, it's not so. Why? That, as we said before, a kli, right, a vessel, a usable object, right, a tool, whatever you want to call it, it's not the way to leave it there on a regular basis, and therefore it's not similar because it's obvious that it's going to be removed. However, for example, let's use the example of a 2x4, right? A 2x4. If there's a beam coming down, right? The classic thing that is done is you take a 2x4 or whatever, or something like that, and you prop it underneath, right? And that's a regular thing done in building. So even though you before Shabbos you've designated the 2x4 to do such a thing, so now the 2x4 is not muktzah because you've made it usable. Whether you made it usable for that use or for a different use, it doesn't make a difference, because let's say you said, you know what, I'm going to use this 2x4 as a to put on my table because it's I'm making a redneck Shabbos, and I'm going to put it on my table and put the hummuses and things across this 2x4, and so now it's a tray. It's going to be like a tray. So you've designated it for something. Okay, but doesn't make a difference, because now when you're taking this 2x4 and propping it, it very much is similar to binyan, to actual building, like is explained above. So so that's
what's interesting is that then, according to that logic, yeah, even if it's just temporarily, even if you're saying just for now,
right? Because it's, in other words, it's not binyan. The reason it's not binyan from the Torah is binyan from the Torah requires that you are doing this to stay there, that it should stay there. If you're not doing it to stay there, you don't have the Torah prohibition of baina. The problem here is
but we're talking about
it looks
doima
like
lebaina.
something that's going to stay there.
Even if it's just temporary, that's going to look like, yeah, that's a classic construction technique.
Right. I'm taking a 2x4.
It doesn't matter, even if it's just for 5 minutes. It's like 30 seconds.
I'm taking a 2x4, and it looks like I'm doing a permanent thing to it. Whereas if I'm sticking a bench up against it, right? It's even just logically, if I'm taking a bench and putting up, most people, at least people who don't know me, wouldn't think that I'm putting the bench there permanently, right? So,
No,
so
it'll
therefore,
come back 10 years later. It's still there. That's a different story. But
Right.
Bechlal benches aren't at least with regards to Daima Laboina, it's not an issue.
you're right.
It don't look like Boina. That's
And the kli. So now we're going back. We said the 2x4 type of thing you can't use. Period. Even the bedpost, and the bench, you can only use it in what way? That it has to be loose, a little bit loose under the beam, in such a way that if he wants to remove it from there, you can. Like remember before that was the Alter Rebbe's categorization of the wedge. Is how hard is it to remove it? But if he sticks this bench there in such a way that he's not going to be able to easily remove it from there, Asur, he is not allowed to do it. Why? Because he is eliminating the original purpose of the kli. Meaning the whole reason the kli isn't a problem is because it's not the way to leave a kli there permanently. But by wedging it in this way, you've just wedged it in permanently. So who cares that it's not a thing that you usually use to wedge it in permanently? You've just wedged it in permanently. So now you've just made it no longer a kli, and you've now just turned this into raw building material. A bench which one of its legs have come out has already been explained. Interestingly, in the Mechaber, it explains it here in this Siman, but it's explained in 308. So we might actually have to jump back to there at some point to cover it, being that we go with that our Simanim go by the Mechaber, so we're gonna probably want to see what the Alter Rebbe's comments are in there. Anyway, notes.
so. Well, we said you can't use an object that's not implemented to support the beam from below, even when it was prepared to be moved. So there's a note actually that there are exceptions to that rule, as it says in Shulchan. You can set aside objects that are not kelim to use for purposes permitted on Shabbos, like the bench, and then they're no longer deemed as muktzah. Okay, so then the next note is a good one. It's a nice big one from Kuntrus Achron. This is a nice big Yud Aleph. Basically, we said in addition to the above, the kli must be standing loosely, slightly loosely under the beam in a manner where it could be removed from there whenever.
You're a little bit quieter than you were before.
Sorry, my mic.
Oh, there you go. Much better.
Sorry, it got knocked away. Okay, now we go. Okay. So, basically, yeah. So the kli has to be loose so that you can move it anytime you want. So you see the Kuntrus Achron, and that comes from Gemara Masechtas Shabbos 43b. See Kuntrus Achron, which is note Yud Aleph 11 to section 266. There, the Alter Rebbe uses this law as a proof that as long as one can remove a utensil that is being used for a function that prevents it from being used for its ordinary purpose, it is not considered as if one has nullified the utensil's functionality. So it remains a keli. True, one intends to leave the utensil in its place for the entirety of Shabbos. Nevertheless, in certain instances, our sages made exception because of the loss involved. They ruled leniently in instances where it's not obvious that the person's intent was to leave the article in its place for the entire Shabbos. Okay, so then we continued. Okay, so then we said basically you could, if you did attach it firmly, it would be where you wouldn't be able to move it right away, meaning the weight of the beam prevents the kli from being moved. It would be also because you'd be nullifying the possibility of using a kli for its inherent purpose. And we'll see the section, see over in section 265 and 310, and the sources cited there, which mention the prohibition against nullifying the possibility of using a kli. The whole bichlal, this whole sugya of where you're nullifying its potential uses, right, that make it not a kli, or it's kli or whatever that's over there.
Yeah.
And that's it. All right, Chav Daled.
Chav Daled 24 hamash v'penei hakarka b'bayis. Somebody who levels the ground. Right, he levels the surface of the ground in a house, a b'chatzer, in a yard. Kegoin shehishpil tail. Like, for example, he put what? He lowered
He levels a mound or fills in a
right,
crevice or a
a
cavity.
mila guma, or fills in a dip,
You're in a
or a
crevice or a
guy,
cavity.
or a hole. This is building the chayav. This is an actual Torah prohibition of building, leveling ground, whether it's evening it up when it's dipped, or whether it's built, or
You're flattening down.
When it's going up. Therefore, a yard that has been ruined from rainwater. Maybe Tevin, he brings hay, and he scatters it around there. Why? Because the hay is the same thing, like we said, by a kli, that you're not. Mevatel means nullifying, but it means it's something that you're not leaving there, that you're not giving up on it there. You're still retaining the idea for its future use, that this is not its permanent situation.
You're not leaving it there permanently.
Yeah. Why? Because it is not because it's fit for feeding for animals. So ultimately, you're going to want to use it for animals, or to make mortar out of it.
Basically saying that it will end up being removed for these other purposes,
which is interesting.
Saying you can't fix up your courtyard like you would in a regular way of moving the dirt around. That would be usser. Rather, you could bring straw and scatter it, because you're not going to end up leaving it there. You're gonna end up taking the straw and use it for other things,
like feeding an animal or for mortar. Now it should be noted that mortar is a problem, but the straw that's used, that would be used.
Mortar, the point is not that you're going to mix it with mortar on Shabbos. It just means because Bichlal, you're not going to leave it there.
It means which just goes to show
use it for something
else. Not
else.
A permanent fix.
He's just bringing the two top uses for straw back then were animal fodder and
feeding animals and
mixing with mortar,
because they weren't familiar with they weren't familiar with Merca, and Merca, we make hats out of it,
straw hats.
So lefikach ein by mishum binyan, therefore it is not considered building at all. But you should not spread something that the way is to leave there, because it looks like that he is intending to level the ground. And since it's left there permanently, so this is a permanent building act, an act of building a permanent structure. When are we talking about? To a courtyard that God ruined. That since he's coming to fix it, so then it looks like he's also looking to level it. But in other cases, you can scatter things, even the kind of things that you would usually use there, since he's not intended to level the surface. So, like, for example, if you have a concrete floor that's 100% level, and whatever, let's just say you have pebbles that you designated before Shabbos to use as what's it called? As carpeting, ich weiß was. And so you take these pebbles and you put that and you spread them down there. Usually pebbles could be a problem, because pebbles is the kind of thing that you might use for leveling. But in this case, it's a leveled concrete floor. It's not it doesn't look like you're doing it. Whereas the yard, which has been messed up, and in fact, I guess even in a yard that's not that is not messed up. Let's say it's a yard, but it's completely flat. So when you're spreading this stuff around, it doesn't look like you're leveling it. Whereas the yard that's gotten messed up, being that it's all up and down or whatever, it looks like you're gonna level it. Looks like that's what you're doing. and therefore you can only use the kind of thing that would not be left there. Notes.
Right. So the next note that would be relevant is to this exact point of not leaving stuff permanently. And it says, if you see over by Shin Yud over in 310, you're allowed to spread ashes to cover spittle or filth. See also Tehillah David on this. But yeah, that even though you're going to leave it there permanently, but Bechlal, it's not something that's used. You don't use ashes to level ground. That's the point. I don't use that stuff to level it, even if I'm going to leave it permanently, but it's not a leveling agent. It's
Right.
not a leveling component. All right. And now this 25.
25. Now, in this case that we were talking about before, that you scatter the straw in a courtyard that God ruined, you should not do it not with a basket or a box. Ella bishuli hakupa, but with the sides of the box. Shiapchenu, that he should turn it over. Yaviateven al shuleha, and he should bring it on its its bottom. Kedei lishanis miderech hachayil, so that he's doing it in a with derech shinoi. He's doing it in a way that is a different from the ordinary way to do it. I will also lizardis biyadi, but you cannot do it with your hand. You cannot do it the regular way that you would do such a thing. Nits.
So we said, because you'll be deviating from your ordinary practice by doing it that way, turning over the container. Since the person's act resembles a forbidden activity, our sages require that he deviate from his ordinary manner of performing the task. Because it's all about basically stressing the point, I think, that because it's all about resembling what it looks like. So if you change how you do it, that takes it out of, I'm also changing how I act. So that's like a Siman, as it were. It is, however, forbidden to scatter the straw by hand, because that's a regular way to do that. Instead, you should shake out the overturned base of the container and let the straw fall on its own. All right. That was Siman Shin Yud Gimel.
That is the end of Shin Yud Gimel.
So what's our next step?
Well,
are we doing all the Siman and Mishnah Brura Alter Rebbe, or are we doing each three?
Well, or we can go inside Machaber and
that's what I'm saying.
That kind of thing.
That stuff.
Yeah, I think while this is still fresh, we can do that. So good. So I guess we're gonna I guess what we can do is cut the live stream for today, but we can stay on the Zoom, and then maybe I will screen share. So let me cut that, and we'll start again with the next